give us some what we call some anticipatory briefs on these 4 platform themes over 10, 5, 10, and 25 years to kind of give us a look in their crystal ball, if you want, and come up with some ideas of what science would look at in those timeframes, in those areas. Fascinating stuff that came out of it, and we can speak a little bit more about the substance of some of these suggestions and what was into these 12 briefs that we asked them to do. But while they were doing that, we then created a parallel forum, a diplomacy forum, with some quite very high-level representatives of the other side of the coin, if you want. The heads of UN organizations, former ministers, science advisors to governments, social scientists, ethicists, etc. And also there, the enthusiasm for joining this was absolutely quite astounding, really. I think that I have spoken to every single UN organization head, and we asked about 16 of them to join us. Not a single one said no. And not just UN organizations, by the way, several others. And again, there, I'm happy to talk a little bit more in detail in questions and answers. We put all these people together on the 18th of December for the first meeting between these 2 fora. And it was an absolutely fascinating conversation where it was the first time they met, and we had to sort of help and assist in getting them together, getting them to meet, getting to start understanding each other and understanding their entry points and their language. And the conversation brought quite a lot of synergy and some agreements on some of the themes that we needed to start moving on, but also very clearly agreed on both sides, very strongly, that there were some transversal issues and very fundamental issues that needed to be taken care of. One was ethics. Very clearly, the message was that this was absolutely necessary, and we obviously knew that already. The second one that was the governance issue. How do you govern these things and make sure that it's governed properly? A lot of the technology that is coming at us at warp speed right now is not governed and is not sort of subject to adult supervision, if I may say so. A lot of it is created in the private sector, and we need to start looking at how we're going to manage these things. And I'll come back to some of that as well. And the third one is to make sure that the equity and that the fact that this is not going to be benefiting just the North, but this is going to be benefiting everybody around the world. They came together with a bunch of suggestions that was then presented to our board on at the end of January, and the board gave us the go-ahead to move deeper into some of the issues that they have brought up, and this is where we are now. We are sort of at the threshold of operationalizing this. We will move into specific task forces that will start looking at the different areas, about 7 of them, and together, both sides, with the diplomacy moderators and the scientists. And then in October, we will have a summit. We will first of all have a report that details where we are, but the summit is also an opportunity for JESDA to tell the public and tell everybody who is interested and who has been part of this to where exactly we stand, where are we in the process, how far have we gotten, what are the subjects that we're working on, which are the subjects that we will work on down the road. And this is also part of our statutory need to inform our founders about where we are. We have to go back to both the government and the Parliament of Switzerland to tell them where we are, because they have to take a decision soon on whether we continue. We were a 3-year startup, and that comes to an end in 2022. And so that's the sort of bare bones of it, if you want. One of the equally important objectives of what we're trying to do is the fact that we took very clearly the fact that the scientific community is probably the community on the planet that has been able to collaborate best across geographic divides, across certainly political divides in a very fragmented world, and learn from that and bring that in as a very clear upside. And together with the diplomacy moderators, who are very also increasingly clear that we have to figure out a different way of working together if we're going to solve the problems that are ahead of us. We have to work better together. We have to break down the silos. We have to be much more networked and much more collaborative and much more integrated. So we are going to, through this, if we're successful, and I see no reason why we shouldn't be, to come up with a proof of concept, or a very simple proposition really, that it is a lot better to work together than not, and to come up with systems that will facilitate that. The system that we have come up with is called the Situation Room, and this is really a kind of a funnel through which we push the different actors and the different subjects at asymmetric speed, depending on what they are. We bring in other actors in there, such as social scientists, or artists, philosophers, youth, very important, the opinions of the public, to make sure that we have as broad as an acceptance as possible, and also that we build back some of the trust that has been lost, both in science and in decision makers and in politicians and in the process, the international process and such. So if we can be part of rebuilding or coming up with a different kind of multilateralism, then we will have done a good turn as well. The structure of the organization is just to give you a very quick sketch. We are in 3 pillars. We have a chairman and a vice chairman. And then under this, we have 3 pillars. One is the academic and the science forum. That is the one that goes out and scans and interacts with the scientists, etc. That forum is co-chaired by the current rector of the Technical University of Zurich and the current rector and of the Technical University of Lausanne. So we have a very strong academic input into the work, which gives us also an incredible network around the world. The University of Geneva is also involved, and the Graduate Institute here in Geneva is also involved. So that is one of our strengths. The academic forum is chaired by me, and then we are in the process of creating an impact forum. As I said, this is going to be the one that will both do the fundraising, but also be the one that manages the money that we're going to be getting, hopefully, to be able to invest in some of these solutions as they move forward down the implementation line. I think, let me stop there basically, because I have now been speaking a little bit more than 20 minutes. I'm happy to go into sort of more details on any of these issues. All I can tell you is that it's incredibly promising. Everybody thinks this is a very cool idea. The scientists are presented with a kind of a funnel through which they can push their research, and at the other end comes a solution that will have an impact on people's lives. They like that very much. The international organizations and their partners, NGOs, etc., are very happy because it gives them access to cutting-edge science much faster than they otherwise would, and get a partner, become part of a very strong network. The governments are very happy because at the end of the day, it's their citizens that are going to be benefiting from this. We have kept governments a little bit at bay. I have been informing them, but we are not allowing them to finance us at this stage. That will come at a later stage, because we really wanted to have a free hand at creating a neutral space in which we can create this outfit and not be subject to undue pressure. The only government that has financed the startup phase was the Swiss government, which is together with the government of Geneva and the city of Geneva, which are the funders. But we have kind of tripled their contribution already through fundraising from private sectors. And I would say that the money is happy. I think a lot of the foundations and the individuals who are interested in helping us think that this is a very worthwhile initiative to invest in. So we are off to a relatively good start, I think. Everybody I speak to and have spoken to over the past year and a half thinks this is good. Doesn't matter if it's somebody that I meet in the street, or whether it's a prime minister, there's a general sort of instinctual acceptance that this is a good project. So let me stop there, and happy to answer any of the questions.
Shall we take a few questions before we go on, because we have plenty of time?
Do you have a question, Gary? I have two
Yes,
questions.
I have.
If you please go on.
I have the first question. If I can hardly wait. Michael, you've talked about the uniqueness of the approach to the science forum and the diplomacy forum, and then looking at the ethical and equity issues. I'm wondering, how far does the conception go from the identification and formulation? Getting these people together, how far does this, I know you're just a startup.
Yeah.
In this, you're really very recently doing, but in conception, where does the boundary of Gesta's work end? Where do how far does it go from this research and working out things? What's the final product, or does it go along the line?
Well, I can give you some examples already, because I haven't spoken.
That would be helpful.
That we have already done. That we have incubated a number of issues, and we're working on a number of other issues already for this year. But the short answer is that it ends at the exit point of our situation room. Once we have a solution, an agreed solution, and once we have helped it take off through funding or creation of partnerships, etc., identification of somebody who can take it over and then work on it, then that's where it goes. We're a very small outfit. We're less than 12 people. And so we're not going to be actually the ones who implement the solutions. We're hopefully going to be able to identify those people who are better placed to do that. Some of the solutions will be are not necessarily physical tools. Some of the solutions may be a new set of rules, and they may be a new institution. Let me just talk to you about two solutions that are already up and running. One is an initiative called IDARE, which is a research collaborative on how to use artificial intelligence in the health sector. That is already up and running. We help them fundraise. They're based in the Graduate Institute here in Geneva, and they're already doing, off to the races. The other one is also a very interesting one, which is it's in terms of digital and diplomacy. The University of Zurich and the University of Geneva are collaborating in the creation of a new institute that we are helping them with, that is looking at how to use artificial intelligence in improving our capacity to make peace, to mediate, and to look at new structures, new diplomacy structures, and new governance structures in those fields. That is already up and working. They are already teaching students. They're already doing research. We will provide, once we have collected some money, we will provide a chair, a GESDA chair to this. It will also be an educational outfit for scientists and for the diplomacy folks, because they need to understand each other's language, and they need to understand, what decision makers and what policy makers and what the people in the field need from the scientists in order to be able to do their jobs better. And the scientists themselves need to understand what the scientists are talking about. And when I sit and listen to all these scientists, half of the stuff I really don't understand, and the other half makes my hair stand on end, because it's really so far out stuff so this is already up and running, and that we are now working ourselves on the creation of an annual anticipatory science and technology report. This will be kind of an index of what's happening around the world on future, what's cooking in the labs, basically, and have a yearly report that will also then form the basis of our summit that we'll do every year. Our first summit will be in October here in Geneva, if we are allowed to do it physically. So that, I think, is going to be a rather important tool for all of us, not just for us, but for decision makers, for policy makers, for the scientists themselves, this is the first time really, and it was very interesting to see them work on all these things and then come back together and suddenly realize the richness of what's going on out there within the very specific, whether it's quantum or it's human augmentation, etc. So mapping what's going on and having a sort of a critical mass of knowledge of the science that is coming down the pike is going to be very interesting and very important, I think. Also in terms of the governance of it and of how we collectively make sure that these technologies are going to benefit humanity and not the other way around. I mean, there's clearly in many of them, there's huge risks involved, if nothing else, when you, what you can do with quantum, at least what the scientists are telling me that, and telling us what we can do with quantum in 25 years from now. We better have a handle on how we govern that and what kind of rules we put in place. The same with gene editing. We've already seen what happened in China with this doctor who modified the DNA makeup of the twins and got thrown in prison for it. But you know, it's very clear that we need to very fast get our act together. And in fact, one of the solutions that we're probably going to be working on that was approved is the creation of a kind of science arbitration court, a place where scientists and others can come and get a ruling on whether what they're working on or whether somebody else is working on is ethical, is acceptable, is something that humanity wants, that the risks are worth taking or not. I think there needs to be an international place that is acceptable, like we have the sports arbitration court here in Switzerland that is a final arbiter on what is okay and what isn't. So I think that is one of the very important elements. And if we can manage to come up with that and push that and be the catalyst for that, then we would have done a really great thing as well, I think. There are plenty of these there's plenty of these things that are cooking and bubbling. And hopefully, if we even manage to do some of 2 or 3 of these things, we'll have done a good thing.
My closing comment, and then I'm handing it to Nebojsa. I think that the combination of the technology, the science, and the diplomacy is so important. One of the issues we've been debating in the Global Leadership 21st Century project, we did it in Geneva, we did it in here this week, is the issue of fake news and how to handle the media problem, which has tremendous political implications and legal implications and all. And it's clearly not just a question of technology. It's a question of law and diplomacy and politics as well. So I think your approach really shows the...
I think that the social aspect of these cutting edge sciences is very much in our minds. And we have several of these scientists who are who work on it, who are very keen on it. And we will have some specific discussions at scientific level on it. How do we make sure that that what we come up with benefits societies and the different societies and the different cultures, and we have to take into account the diversity of the people we're looking at, and certainly that to make sure we don't create Frankensteins.
Okay, I have learned that in December last year, the initial 12 JESDA scientific and disciplinary briefs were produced.
Yes.
Is it possible to obtain this document?
Yeah, I can. They're on, if I'm not mistaken, they're on our website. And let me, by the way, draw attention to our website, which is jesda.global. Mm-hmm. And they should be uploaded already now. If they're not, please let me know and I will send them to you.
It was not there a few days ago. That's
okay. Well, they should be, but anyway, otherwise we can certainly make it available, and certainly in pre-seed form. The other thing is, if you go, the other thing I want to draw attention to is on the website, you can sign on to our best reads. The best reads is every Friday we send out a whole series of articles from all over the world on the issues that we're working on. And most of them are scientific articles, and it's a very rich trove every Friday. I mean, there's at least 24 articles that we send out, and you're more than welcome to sign on to that. All of you, by the way.
Okay, thank you very much. The second question is the following. I have found a statement on the JESDA's website that the international scientific community has not been much engaged in international policy making, which tends to focus more on the role of governments, political and economic intergovernmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, and business community. I have the same opinion. Therefore, I would like to inform you that a project on basic sciences and sustainable development ought to be established soon in WAAS. It would be devoted to the whole chain of research and development, whose proper structuring and functioning on the global, regional, and national levels should ensure a coherent approach to the present and potential future problems and challenges of mankind. Therefore, we are thinking about establishing a collaboration with JESDA. I'm talking about WAAS. What do you think about that collaboration? Would you be ready for that?
Yes. Look, I think that in today's world, any organization such as ours, any NGO that wants to have an impact, will not have that impact on that unless it is a networked organization. We have to create partnerships and we have to work together. We have to walk the talk that we and I would be more than happy for us to establish a partnership. And if you hadn't proposed it, I would have proposed it myself.
Thank you very much. We have not yet made the concept, but I hope we'll do that soon, and then we'll come back to you soon with a concrete idea, not the whole front. We would like to choose something within the wide scope you have already.
But as you go about that, I mean, you know, we're both of us, our organizations are kind of entering into this right in the middle of a new trend of science diplomacy that is happening. If you look at the European Union is working very hard on that and wants to give itself a capacity for science diplomacy. They need a little help because I find their approach a bit bureaucratic, as with many things they do. But they have a lot of quite a few papers that sets out how they want to do it and how they want to go about it. I think there is several governments that want to do it. One of the interesting feedbacks when we discussed and when I have discussed with governments, quite a few governments came on their own to visit us, to sit down and talk, was that all of them wanted to hear how they could create a JESDA back home. So one of the products that we're going to be working on is kind of a JESDA in a box that we can give them so they don't have reinvent some of the procedures that we invented and the structures. And then kind of franchise, if you want, to governments where basically at the end of the day, this is where whatever we do is going to be proven or not proven to be useful, because it's in the lives of citizens around the world that we will make sure we will show our impact. So it's a very what's the word I'm looking for? Energetic field, if you want. Lots of stuff happening. And one of the things that we need to do, and there's something certainly that we can do together and with other partners, is to connect the dots between these many different initiatives to make sure that we don't sit and reinvent wheels that have already been invented. So as you set out your framework and your vision, I'm more than happy to either have myself or others of my colleagues to interact with you and have conversations so you can benefit from our experience until now, and point to some of the areas where we think that it might be useful to put emphasis.
Thank you very much. And now, finally, a piece of information for you. The year 2022 has been proclaimed the year of basic sciences for sustainable development. It was done by UNESCO in November last year. WAAS, in the meantime, WAAS has proposed to organize a conference in Belgrade, Serbia, in September 2020, and the title is Basic Sciences and Sustainable Development. We are working on the program, and let me tell you, very frankly, we would like very much to have you among the participants of the conference. I know that you might be very busy, thus please write that down. It's September 2020, Belgrade, 22. Serbia.
2020 is already passed.
2022, sorry. September 2022. It'll be a high-profile conference. It will be a real global event. And I have to stress, we will talk about connections between basic sciences and sustainable development. But we would also like to talk about basic sciences themselves we would like to have basic scientists of the high class to obtain some kind of a picture of today's advanced research in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology, and also all the connections along the chain of research and development.
Okay.
And I'll send you very soon the information.
Yeah, I have two comments to that. One is, please remember that the central and operational word in our organization is anticipation. We will not work on stuff that's happening already now or on sciences that are already on the table. We are really looking at 5, 10, 25 years. A lot of other people are looking at what's happening today and trying and applying that to. One of the big problems that I have when I speak to people, and particularly heads of organizations and other colleagues, is the fact that quite naturally, within the first minute, the conversation turns to the needs they have today. That's their job. They have to solve the problems of the people that they're supposed to help. Whereas I want to talk to them about their toolbox for the future. And actually, interestingly enough, a lot of them have already done much more than I thought in terms of looking to what are going to be their technological needs down the road if they really want to remain relevant and be able to deal with the problems that are coming. You know, there's some basically massive problems, quite apart from climate. There's health, there's migration, there's corruption, there's education. You know, there's all of the issues that are coming from the urbanization of the global population are going to come up. There's really, there is so many issues that need to be dealt with. We can only do it if we do it together, and we can only do it if we have an integrated approach to problem solving. I mean, you know, we know all that, and this is what the Sustainable Development Goals are about. So yes, absolutely. Let's work on that. But so I'm just coming back to that. I'm if I can, I'm more than happy to join you. But I will talk about the future. And if you need connections, or if you need certain scientists to speak about certain, we may be able to help you connect with the guys that work for us, the guys and women who work for us, and see if they can be part of your conversations.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Gary, I think there will be a number of questions from the audience. I'm sure of that. I'm seeing that in the chat and Q&A parts here. But my suggestion is that we move on and give a chance to the second speaker. And then if we have time after that, we may ask the audience to put questions. Thus, I guess you agree. Let us then move on. And our second speaker today is Professor Ortwin Ren. He is chair of the Making Sense of Science Working Committee within Science Advice for Policy of European Academies. This institution, SAPIA, is one of the two crucial elements of scientific advice of the European Commission. Thus, Ren, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, also for your kind introduction. I'm representing today SAPIA. As you had said, SAPIA is the scientific advice for policymaking by European academies. It is a part of the science advice mechanisms that are valid in the European Union. And there is a very clear distinction between the scientific input that comes from SAPIA, which is basically an analytical skill that we understand the scientific background of an issue, that we will get the best experts from all the European academies together and then come up with a suggestion of how to analyze the issue. The solutions are then given by another issue or by another body, and that's the chief scientific advisors to the European Union, and they then draft the real recommendations for policymaking. So there is a kind of a distinction between the analytic part. So what is the problem? What is the diagnostic of the situation? Or what do we know? We can also have lessons learned from the past, but then what does it mean concretely for the EU in terms of policymaking? That's something that comes from the chief scientific advisors. So just to understand a little bit of the architecture here. Now, a very, let's say, unusual demand was given by us by the European Commission to look into the issue of what are the present mechanisms, but also what are the functions and what are the benefits, but also the problems of science advice to policymaking. And I think what Michael was just talking about, anticipation, is certainly one major issue that we're dealing with, to see how can we make sure that the best interdisciplinary science advice gets to the policy-making bodies, and how can we make sure first that they understand the issue in all its complexity, secondly that they can distinguish between good science and bad science, or between truths and fake truths, and thirdly that we can also show that there is diversity in terms of policy options. It's not that scientists can say, you know, if you want to have A, you have to do X, Y, Z. That's not that simple. We know there are different options. Any option has negative side effects. So we always have pros and cons. So we need to make trade-offs. And all of that gets in a very complex structure in terms of advice. And that was a reason for us to having this report, to saying, look, it's not like the linear model that we had in the past. The linear model was, we asked some scientists what is true. The scientists said, if you do A, you will reach your goal. If you do B, you won't reach it. So do A. And then the politicians will say, yes, well, A may not be as popular, but we can do A whatever period, and then this will be close enough. So that was a kind of traditional science policy model. And we believe that has never been really true on one hand side, but secondly, it is definitely outdated for the modern world. And that's basically true because we face three major elements here. One is the world has become more complex, or better said, our knowledge about the world has more complex. The world has always been complex, but we have thinking about the world as being deterministic and easy and mechanical. It's not. And so when we know more about the world now, we know it's complex. There are a lot of probabilistic issues that we have to deal with. Cause and effects are not that easy to determine. And there are a whole set of interlinkages of causes, also of moderators, of amplifiers and attenuators. All of this, you know, builds a complex model, and we're trying to regenerate these models in terms of, you know, getting a better hold of this complex reality. But we always know it's always a simplification, and we always may leave out some very important elements. The second major point is that we get more and more into a stochastic representation of the world. So we cannot say if A, then B, but we can say if A, then with a specific probability is B, with another one C, another one D, but E is out of the question. So that's absurd. And that's, again, a very important challenge for communication, because in the old world, it was very clear to say, if you said if A, then C, it was wrong. Now you say, no, it's not wrong. It could be, but it's very unlikely. But D is definitely out. And that is kind of difficult to understand even for policymakers, but even more so in the general public. And the third aspect is what we call ambiguity, that, you know, the more we work interdisciplinarily, we find out that each kind of, you know, complex structure has many sides to look at. And even if we are totally truthful to the facts, there are different types of interpretations of the same thing. And the famous example, the glass is half full or half empty, has different connotation. And we see that connotations, or we call it in a modern language, framing of the question and the framing of the solution, makes a major difference in how policymakers actually deal with the recommendations. If you say, if it takes that vaccine, only half of the people will die, or if you say, if you take that vaccine, half of people will be saved, will make a major difference in their preference structure. So in that sense, the more complex things are, this was very just simple examples, things began as framing. The way that we put it into language becomes a very, very important element. So what does that mean in terms of policy science interaction, or the nexus between policy and science? And we've seen that we see different functions of science for policymakers, and we cannot put them all together. We need a little bit to distinguish them, and then to say, you know, what kind of problem do we have and what kind of function is most important. The first function is enlightenment. And that is still important, because if you have complex systems, you have to make people familiar with the complexity. They may not be familiar with all the details, but just saying, you know, if you do A, it will have impacts on B, C, D, F, G, H, and maybe even more. So just be careful that there is a whole chain of reaction, and so that people understand the entire system. For example, the energy system or the agricultural system. And with the SDGs, which just, you know, Michael pointed to, it's that clear that there's a lot of complex structures where we really need to have a better understanding. The second major function is orientation. And orientation means that, and I think that's really related to anticipation, to say, you know, what are the main trends of the world right now? So we're thinking now about digitalization as a main trend or a main transformation. We see issues of globalization, but also anti-globalization. We see issues of sustainabilization, so getting more sustainable is a big process now. And we see that these kind of trends interact. They also create conflicts. And so it's very important to orient policymakers about, you know, in which world they are at this point and where the world is emerging to, and what are the new trends, either technologically, but also socially and culturally. And that's orientation. And that's very important. It's not instrumental. It's really to give people a feeling, you know, where are we now? To give them a position. And I think that comes very close, Michael, what you said as your first question, where are we? You know, and, you know, where do we stand right now? Now, the third one, which is very important, is strategic or instrumental. And that's still very important, but it's more than what we had before. When we talk about strategic policy advice, we want to know, we know the goal. For example, we want to have climate neutral energy provision in 2050. Well, that's something that, at least in Europe, everybody wants to accomplish. So we want to say, what are the best scientifically proven strategies to reach that goal? And at the same time, we have to look at what are the negative side impacts of using option one over using option B or C, because there is not a solution that is dominant on all things that matters to us. So the so-called dominant solution decision theory is one that's only existing in theory if we talk about complex systems. We always have trade-offs. We always will conflict with something else, and that we have a win-win-win-win solution is extremely rare. So it's very important for scientists to say, look, guys, yes, if you want to get climate neutral in 2050, these are the various options that we have, and we can combine them, but each of them has also negative impacts. And you have to decide. And that leads us to actually to the next major element there, which is co-creation. If you start to think about trade-offs, you have to include the policymakers, but also the major societal actors to actually bring in their preferences, to say, look, guys, you know, yes, we want to get this neutral, but we don't want to lose whatever 50% of our employment. That doesn't work. So we have to find out a solution that will, you know, create more employment, or will have very good training programs for our people that work in the car industry. All of that is not just a scientific issue. It's an issue where we need the unions, where we need maybe some of the NGOs, or we need the car manufacturers at the same table. And it's not like the old model where we had the scientists set the truth, and then we get it to the interest groups and they try to finesse about it. You know, the truth is a part of, you know, how people act. And so we need to know, how do you act? What do you do with it? We know we have to get to electric cars, and we have to have new mobility concept. You car industry, what will you do? And we both co-create solutions. That is extremely important, because otherwise, you know, we can have wonderful solutions, but if the car industry and the unions and everybody else says, no, we don't want to tolerate the side effects there, well, then it's just, you know, a nice thought, but it doesn't have any real impact. So if you want to have the impact, we also need this co-creational space in which science works together with stakeholders, with major actors, to develop solutions based on evidence and true science. That is extremely important, because we have a lot of interest groups that base their claims on fantasy, on wishful thinking. And specifically, if you look in the United States, Russell's wishful thinking was the main selector for truth. That doesn't work. And I think we need to be very careful about this, that to say, okay, science is still the best guarantee that whatever you do will do what you expect it to do. We are still not perfect in this, but we are better than anybody else. And so to that extent, having science as, given the evidence what we have about what can happen if you do A rather than B, co-creating solutions with actors based on what we know and what we don't know. Of course, we also have to think about how to deal with uncertainties, that's clear. But nevertheless, getting that kind of creative space working, that I think our major recommendation, and we have also proposed a lot of formats of how to do this in a kind of transdisciplinary science model. But nevertheless, my main message is here, the old science policy nexus of having one creating the truth and the other one creating the action is not working anymore. We need a better model in which we co-create solutions, in which we have the interdisciplinary research that creates the space for evidence, and we have the various groups and the policymakers that want to do really resolve trade-offs in the public interest, for the public interest. I think also that echoes, what you said, Michael, about, the third major element being for the public good. And I think this needs good formats, and we're very much willing to engage ourselves in these formats. And if any of you would have any questions on this, I'm very happy to answer this. And this completes a little bit my little report on this big Mothers report. You can still get this report and the SAPEA platform, email platform. I have it right here if you want. Yes, that's how it looks. And then you can also read a little bit more details about what I've just said. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gary, I guess you have a question or two, do you?
Well, I'd like to open it up because I think my only comment is it's strikingly parallel to what Michael was talking about. The same idea, except this is the immediate what's going on today for the practical issues, and Michael's group is looking out more. But the model is, the implementation may be different, but the principle behind it is very similar. So it's perfect. It's a perfect combination for both of you to be speaking at the same session on it. Thank you very much, Professor Wren. Why don't we open it for other questions and hear from others? Michael,
do you want to respond?
You're muted, Mike.
You have to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. I keep doing that. Where do I find the report, Otwin? I'd love to have a look at it.
Yeah, well, the report is behind the SAPEA has its own homepage. It's SAPEA, and there is a report. It's called MASOS, M-A-S-O-S. And but if you have any problem, you can write me, and I can send you a copy. That's no problem.
Okay, but so if somebody would send me your email, then that would be great.
I can put it in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, Ortwin, I have a question for you. It is well known that since the beginning of the 1980s, science and technology represents one of the four pillars of the socio-economic development of China, beside agriculture, industry, and military. It is well known. The extraordinary results of that development are clearly visible today. We all see that and see some kind of acceleration of all that. Thus, is there any organized direct or indirect interaction of the science advice mechanism of the European Union and the corresponding mechanism in China, direct or indirect? Are you following what I do?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Very interesting question. And, we do have, of course, SAPEA has good context to the various academies of science in China. I mean, there's the Social Academy, there's also the Academy of Engineering and the National Science Academy. They're different in China, as you know. And of course, we're trying to also be in contact with our Chinese colleagues. I myself have a professorship at Beijing Normal University, so I do teach classes there, and I have graduate students. However, I think what's very different from the European part is that the science policy interface is different in a country where you have one party. and a party that basically directs what's going on. That has sometimes advantages. Or I mean, we have been working, for example, in some areas on environmental protection, where we had the chance to give some recommendations to one of the ministers, and he said, "Well, okay, we're going to do this tomorrow." And I've never seen that in any European context, that somebody, even Merkel, or anyone of van Leyen or whatever would go on and say, "Oh yeah, that's great. I'll go and do this tomorrow." So this is something, and it has its, advantages, disadvantages. We know. I mean, it's democratic legitimization is something different. But so that actually happened to us, and I think that was really interesting. The other thing, of course, is that the policy science interface is always under the scrutiny of let's say political correctness. I would say it this way, and that is certainly something that is sometimes difficult for scientists in China, even for the Chinese scientists. But also for foreign scientists coming in. It's not always visible, but if you go deeper, that does happen. And if something is not welcomed politically, well, it won't be heard. And that can be much more dramatic than it is in let's say, in European countries. But I think it's really good to have that connection. And we know that, with our scientific colleagues in China, we have a lot of very good cooperation. And I think it's very important. Nevertheless, we also witness some of the difficulties. And of course, I mean, there is clear difference in political culture.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, we have 10 more minutes in this session. And let us give a chance to people from the audience. And I guess they can come in. And I see a question from our colleague, Mariana Borgeson. Can she ask the question? I'm asking the support team. Can Mariana put a question direct?
Yes, we will do that, yes.
Mariana is a fellow WAAS. Okay, if not, let me put the question instead of her. I see the question, and it is directed to Michael.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Okay, please go on, Mariana. Please go on.
Yeah, hello. I'm sorry you can't see me because I'm on my iPad, and I blocked the view because I don't want to be seen by everybody. But the question with respect to the AI, and I'm actually extremely thrilled to have learned about this project, is geared to Mr. Muller regarding Gesta. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful initiative. And my question refers to and a few names of the participating agents. What organizations are you working with? Have just signed up the Asilomar principles? Who are the main players? Are you working together with the X Prize people in California? I would really, really be interested in seeing, in what direction do we go? And first of all, how I personally get involved with it. I've been in artificial intelligence since the 1970s.
Wow. Okay. Shall I answer now, or do you want to take
yes,
a question?
Please do. Please go on.
Yeah. Hi, Mariana. Well, first of all, on X Prize, one of our board members is the head of X Prize. So already there we have the connection. We have a very strong board, and you'll be able to see the names of the board and the names of the scientists and the names of all the diplomacy actors on the website. As I said, jesa.global. Somebody just typed that they had looked at it, and the report is up. Again, if it's not, please contact me either through us or directly. Now we are a startup. We just started a year ago, and we're now only taking the first steps into the operationalization of it. So we are in the process of creating these partnerships But until now, we have sort of crafted what JESDA within our own groups and with the scientists that we have invited to join us and the different organizations. So we are now, to start with, for example, we have now not formal, but we have very strong partnerships with practically every UN organization and the Secretary General's office in the UN. We are now beginning to reach out to NGOs. Where you have to understand that what we are aspiring to is to be a very operational organization. There's a lot of talk shops around, and there's a lot of organizations in Geneva that are being set up and have been set up over the past couple of years that are working in the digital area, in the cyber area, etc. But most of them are working on norms, so they're working on governance. So what we'd like to do is to, at the end of the day, at the end of the process, have some very practical operational results that will make a difference in people's lives. So that will determine also what kind of partners we link up to. We haven't signed up to the Asilomar principles yet because, as I said, we are not there, but we're very quickly coming to where we're going. One of the problems we have, if you want, which is also a problem in terms of convincing major donors to support us, is that we don't know if we're going to be alive in 2022. That will be determined by the end of this year by the government, by the parliament, and by the conversations that we're going to have with the decision makers here, because there's a limit to how much we can go out, reach out, and say, well, guys, we'd like to partner with you. If at the end of the day, in less than a year, we're not going to be around to do the partnering. So we take it step by step. But as I said early on, our intention is very much to create partnerships. Now, in terms of your own involvement in one form or the other, I'm not quite sure. I don't know you, Mariana, but please send me a mail. My email is very easy. It's michael.moller@jesda.global.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm a serial entrepreneur turned investor. So, and I've been, investing in AI and bringing the commercial internet to Germany and into Europe, actually, and investing in the Energiewende or the investment Wende. So this could be the beginning of a wonderful partnership between WAAS and JESDA. So thank you so much. I'm thrilled. And as you know, Elon Musk has just donated 100 million for an X Prize. Yes. For carbon sequestration. So maybe you could participate in that.
Well, I'd rather have him donate for JESDA. We'll see how we can fix that.
Well, let's get a part of it for you.
But just to let you know that, of course, at the end of the day, we are going to enter into private-public partnerships in operationalizing whatever solutions we come up with. So there will be plenty of scope also from that end to come in also as investors.
Thank you very much. There is another question, and the question comes from Thomas Reuter, our colleague, who is trustee of WAAS. He is basically the guy who made the connection between us and Ortwin. Thus, the question is for you. Thomas, please unmute yourself and put the question to Ortwin.
Yes, Ortman, I just wanted to ask how you think the World Academy could best bring itself into the European policy process. I know SAPEA is a network of European academies, but how narrow is that definition? I mean, we have a lot of people in Europe as well, so could we be a part of it? And if so, how? And what could we contribute? Perhaps a global dimension or something like that.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas, for this question. Unfortunately, I'm not the person who can ask it. I'm a part of this academy world because I'm, of course, a member of the German Academy Leopoldina and the BBAW, which are both members of the SAPEA. And I was asked by the SAPEA president Glowich to chair the the specific working group. So maybe I'm not the person really who can decide that, but personally, I would welcome this very, very much. I think one of the things is what I really complain about is the apartmentalization of the scientific institutions worldwide. And, we have got so many acronyms of aggregations of, it's ICLU and IQ and whatever it is. It just, it adds and adds and adds. And I have to go through all of these acronyms to see, wow, I mean, this is another academy, or this is another union, this is it. If he had more, let's say, what I call transnational scientific advice, I think it would be much better, because all the national academies are sometimes entrenched into national policies. They also sometimes have hard times to, develop their independence, given the governmental situation. And if there is a support, in terms of the world support, I think I would really cherish this, and I would encourage you. And if I could possibly, I could of course make your entree, with the chairs of the European academies. There are two in total, but one that is, I think, more important is the one in London. And to Sapir, of course, because I truly believe that this interlinkage between the academies is a very important element.
Thank you very much, Ortwin. I might take that offer up. And
yeah, please do so. Do so.
I was going to ask, Nebosha, if I may, ask quickly something to Michael as well, and because what really fascinates me and has been, for a long time is, how do you facilitate dialogue amongst different sectors in the policy process? How do you get people around the table, the right people around the table from these different sectors, so that you can be not just a talk shop, but an organization that really is action-oriented and solution-oriented in that sort of transsectoral process?
Well, that's the whole purpose of what we're doing. I mentioned the situation room process, which we have created, which is precisely what you've just described in a better way than I did. It's really the place where we put together people who have never met before, didn't even know of each other's existence, doesn't have the same language, don't understand each other's entry points, and it's a pretty complex kind of set of negatives, if you want, that needs to be overcome. One of the things that really struck me in this past year is, because I thought it would be quite difficult, and we understood that sometimes when I'm asked what I do, and in order to simplify it, I said we're a mixture between a dating agency and a translation agency. But the fact is that the alacrity and the enthusiasm of the scientists to sit down with the end users of what they may come up with, and vice versa, was much, much bigger than I thought it would be. Yes. These silos have just disappeared. And this has been really a very, very, very positive element of this, and that we are building. Not only that, but also they're usually scientists have been in the past, at least, just as siloed as the policymakers and the governments. But we're now moving in the direction, certainly within what we're doing, where the conversations are between scientists as well, and different kind of fields and different kinds of areas in which are working, where they're more and more clear that if we're going to make it, they're going to have to sit down between them and come up with something that makes sense.
Yes, that's right.
So until now, it's worked actually much, much better than I thought it would, and we're certainly going to continue on that. Just since I have the floor, Leopoldina, I just wanted to let you know, for example, that one of the scientists that we have with you, I think, is your president. It's Gerald Haug, who is one of the scientific moderators that is working with us. So Thomas, no, he disappeared. Okay, no, you're there, Thomas. This is really at the center of our identity, if you want. This is precisely what we were made to do.
I feel very strongly that half the problems we have in the world is because the right people fail to meet.
I agree with you, but that's, if there's one thing that is, actually, let me also mention something I didn't mention before. It's not by chance that we have placed physically this initiative in Geneva. Some of you know, others don't, but the fact is that Geneva, International Geneva, as we call it, is really the operational hub of the international system. There is no other place where you have a kind of ecosystem like we have here, with over 100 international organizations, about 700 NGOs, 1,600 multinationals, a huge set of academic institutions that are linked to some of the stronger ones around Switzerland. And that ecosystem is working because it's a technical place more than a political place and a more diplomacy place. It's not New York, and most of the structures are technical structures. It's a lot easier to get an agreement between technicians than it is between diplomats and politicians. So we are leveraging that, and because of the understanding that is very rapidly coming into the sort of bloodstream of these different organizations, that they have to de-silo themselves completely. They have to start collaborating. They have to start integrating their different efforts. This we're seeing very strongly here in Geneva, and it's happening quite fast. So that in itself is a driver also of this putting together people that have never talked to each other before. It's really very positive.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, we are close to the end of the session, but we have time for one more question. Azita, please. Unmute yourself. Okay.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the opportunity. And Michael, greetings to you, and congratulations for how far you've reached with this great initiative. My question is actually addressed to Michael, and all those three fundamental transversal issues that you mentioned, the ethics, the equity, distributional aspects, and the human rights. How are you envisaging to get there? Do you see that within these two communities that you have brought together, the diplomatic community broadly called so, and the scientific community, where do you have them? As social scientists in the scientific community, or the normative standards that international organizations have come up and they bring value? How will you make that happen? What are the plans there?
Please unmute yourself, Michael.
Sorry, I've been being on Zoom for over a year and I keep it. Sorry about that. Anyway, it comes back to what I answered before. In that situation room process where we get people to discuss and where we put people together, there will be those different kinds of people that you've talked about. And we have in our group, and those who have committed to help us out, we have ethicists. We have some very strong professors of ethics, and particularly ethics in new technologies, that are going to be following and participating in the discussions. We have social scientists. We have the High Commissioner for Human Rights, who herself is a scientist, has committed her organization to being there with us and accompanying us and making sure that whatever conversation we're having will be anchored also in the human rights imperatives. So we're very attentive to that, and even more so because, as I said before, it's very clear that all of the participants, both the scientists and the diplomacy actors, want this to be ethical. They want it to be based on human rights. They want it to be based on the Sustainable Development Goals, and they certainly want it to be governed properly. So the push is there, and the push is also will come from the public. We are putting in place systems by which we are going to reach out to the public as well, to make sure that they can participate in the conversation in one form or the other. We're very keen to make sure that we have youth representatives, and we have them in these conversations from different parts of the world. So all of this is being built now, but I mean the sort of principles of the architecture, if you want, is very much there and in line with what you were asking.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we have to close the session. I would like to thank Michael and Portman very much for their very interesting speeches. All of us hope that some kind of collaboration would be generated with the two organizations they represent in this way or the other way. We'll see about that. I also would like to thank the discussants from the audience. Thus, we are closing the session and we should move to the next one. Michael, Portman, goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you. Thank you to all of you for participating. And
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you. And if there are more questions, please just send me an email. I know that Orhan was waiting patiently for having a question, but if you just send it to me per email, I'm very happy to answer it.
We have to move right now.
I repeat Ortwin's, my email is available as well. All the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.